Yeah, there's a woman that I hired up here in Portland named Bernadette Gonzalez who grew up in Albuquerque. Good. I love that city.
Okay, let's get this meeting going here. Thanks for coming out, everybody that's here. Thank you. Some housekeeping stuff. West Rock this coming week is going to be on Sunday, and then the following week we're back to Saturday again, and on the 25th, 7 o'clock, and at West Rock Recycling on 100th and off of Foster. Neighbor to Neighbor is this Sunday. Saturday. Oh yeah, Sundays are my house. This Saturday, 8 o'clock breakfast, back to 8 from 8:15.
It's a special day.
Oh, that's right. We don't get to eat in front of the speakers.
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay, so we'll have
special guests.
There's special guests coming. Come and find out what Neighbor to Neighbor is all about and how you can benefit from helping people in your community. It's a wonderful thing. And we've got Coffee with the Cop coming up Wednesday, September 15th at 10 a.m. Come and meet one or two of the East Portland officers. Hopefully Erica Hurley's going to be there.
She's not available now.
She's still in Tennessee?
She's out of state, yeah.
Okay, yeah, she's in Tennessee. She's on her way to Tennessee.
I asked that same question, Bob. She looking for another job?
No, she's looking for property. She's looking for, I think, retirement. She's got family in Tennessee because I went, why would anybody go to Tennessee in September? Anyway, come and meet a couple of East Precinct officers and talk about what's going on. And we're sort of getting back to normal. Danny contacted Char and the VFW breakfast is on again. Yay, hooray. So it starts Sunday, September 19th, 9 o'clock. And it's at the American Legion Hall over Southeast 88, running parallel to the multi-use path. Okay, so all sorts of wonderful things. It's nice to have breakfast back again.
Yeah.
One breakfast back anyway. So, Weston Glass, welcome to the Lnla. You're going to talk about what you're building on 92nd, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sorry I don't have a better way to show you all this, but I am talking today. I work for Palindrome Communities. We are a developer, and you may be familiar with us. I just started at Palindrome, so when I say us and we've done these things, it's not really me, but I like to take credit. Palindrome is a developer who did the Oliver Station buildings on the corner of 92nd and Foster. We did the Zweigel House Brewing building, Humdinger Pizza and Shifters Bar, and this will be the next project in that straight shot of 92nd.
92nd what?
Ramona.
It's north of Foster, the building that the acupuncture clinic was in.
Former Oddfellows Hall. Historical Oddfellows Hall.
Oh, so it's going to be next door to it.
Is going to be in it. So,
So you're tearing down the Oddfellows home?
we're not tearing down the Oddfellows Hall.
Oh, so it's going to be next to it.
Across the street.
No, they're redeveloping it.
It's good. We're turning the Oddfellows Hall into apartments and ground floor retail, where we're not sure what's going to be on the ground floor yet. What we're hoping for is a grocery store, neighborhood market type thing, but it's really just going to depend on what.
So you're going to be on the bottom floor of the Oddfellows home?
On the ground floor of the Oddfellows Hall will be a commercial space.
Well, I thought they had people that do exercises and stuff in there.
That's gone.
Oh, they're, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it, what's that? And next door is where the fire was at.
Right. So that building has been demolished.
Yeah.
The one that was damaged with the fire.
And that's what's going to go up in that one picture?
Yeah, so here's that building historically.
Yeah,
built in
right.
1913, the Oddfellows Hall. Here's it today. And what we are building on that site is 47 apartments. 6 of those apartments will be affordable housing, and 3,500 square feet of commercial space, which will be on the ground floor of the Oddfellows Hall.
Okay.
And so that commercial space, like I said, we don't know what the tenant will be, but the idea is a neighborhood market of some kind. So this is the schedule. Basically, the idea is we're submitting for permits in just a couple of weeks here, and we're hoping to get those permits in February of next year. The city of Portland is incredibly slow right now on anything related to building permits. Anything related to anything really.
I was gonna say, that's on everything.
So there's no promises.
On your other apartments that you build, you have 6 of these new ones, we'll call the Oddfellow building. What did you put in, how many affordable housing units do you have for the Oliver Towers? Or?
The Oliver Station project, there are 140 apartments, and of those, 126 are affordable.
Affordable, what's affordable?
So the city, Portland Housing Bureau defines what that means, and 60% MFI is the benchmark they use. MFI means median family income. So the city determines these numbers. They say, here's what we consider to be median family income. For someone making 60% of that, here's what they could afford, so that's what you're allowed to charge for these apartments. And of course, people have to prove their income level to move into the apartment, but if they move in there and then get a raise or get a better job, they don't have to move out. They're allowed to stay, and their rent doesn't go up. Yeah. So this one will be more of the market rate apartments. So the idea is we start construction in February. This all depends on permits, though. The city is very slow on permits. And then by the end of next year, it should be done and start leasing out the apartments. And a few months after that, the building should be full, and hopefully the ground floor commercial tenant will be in and operating.
Is all your commercial space used in the other two? It is, right?
As far as I know, I think there's an empty space.
Oh,
There's
is
a
there?
couple in the empty spaces.
Is there?
Yeah, there are a couple.
And the first one that went up is still empty on the bottom.
Yeah, there are
And then the
two.
Oliver stations are across from each other.
Yeah. Right now, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of new, so I don't know everything about every building, but that one has, I know Planet Fitness is on the ground floor.
Right.
And
Well, I know Bella's is on the other one, the health place.
that's right, there's the health clinic.
Right, and then there was a bar that was next to Bella's, and they're gone.
Yeah, and then there's the small building on the
There's a dental
back, and there's a dental office and a
Uh-huh.
wood-fired pizza place, I believe,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
something like that.
okay.
But the idea is, the more apartments we have, the more people will live here, and the more they can support businesses. So,
Well, my problem is parking.
sure.
They're,
I definitely understand that. The way the city sees it is that this building is a very short walk to the MAX station
Right.
and several bus lines, and Foster now has bike lanes on it, and so
But if you ever have to go grocery shopping,
I know.
Costco,
Well, but it's really
Yeah.
close to Harold, and they can all park on Harold. It's a short walk to Harold to park their car in front of the residents who actually live and have parking and garages and
I
driveways.
think Harold's full of motorhomes and cars right now.
Well, I haven't been down there for a week, so it might be, they might have to fight with the RVs.
You'd have to go park at the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, the Boys and Grill Club is only gonna end up with like 6 parking places, so there's gonna be a fight for that one too.
Yeah.
And there's a
There's
fight
very
for
little
parking all
parking.
over there because they choose not to put in parking spaces because, everybody takes the train or the bus or rides a bike, except they don't.
Actually, that's the city's requirement. They're not allowed to provide more parking spaces than a set number per houses.
It is a city policy to discourage building more parking spaces.
It's gonna be amazing what they're doing with that, going to do with that field.
Oh, I know.
Well, more tenements. I mean, more low-cost housing,
I don't know what they're gonna do.
because we don't have any, right?
Really, a grocery store.
Well, that's gonna go in your building, right? The grocery store? and
The grocery store, yeah, that's the idea, that's what we like in
Come and
there.
get
Okay.
the stuff on the side of the road, that's what you're gonna get. But
I mean, it's only 3,500 square feet, so it's not gonna be like a
Oh.
big grocery store,
Big
but the
convenience
idea
store.
is, something nicer than a
We got one.
convenience store and
Trader
something,
Joe's?
I don't think that's close to enough space for them. But, you
None of
know,
those are going there. It's just gonna be a
There's
mom
no
and pop
parking
store.
lot. No store is gonna go in there except a C-store, which we've already got, because there's no place to park.
No.
They're servicing the tenants that live in the apartments.
That's the philosophy.
That's the
Yes.
philosophy.
In your research to building, have you researched like what affordable housing is in use of the other facilities? And then based your affordable housing on that number? Or how did you determine the affordable housing ratio?
good question. The ratio is determined by Portland, the zoning,
Okay.
inclusionary
So
zoning.
the Department of Housing,
Yeah, Portland requires, well, there are ways for developers to get around it, but we're not doing that. So to comply with the inclusionary zoning, 15% of your units are affordable.
and do you know of what's happening with the other buildings that you've been involved with building?
They're
Yeah.
all, the
So
affordable.
they are affordable?
Yeah, that's generally the rule is, there's so much demand for affordable housing, no matter how much you build, you'll fill it up.
Now, is that being subsidized by Section 8 or who's, anybody subsidizing?
Section 8 does subsidize.
In your building, what percentage is subsidized, what percentage are paying their own way?
I don't know, I'm not sure. I know that some tenants have Section 8, but I don't have the numbers.
And what's the rent range from studio to two bedrooms you guys have, or what do you guys have?
So in this building, they're mostly going to be one bedrooms,
What are
and
those going for?
there's a range. So some are much smaller, and there are a few that are really nice, big, like with a mezzanine level. So the most affordable ones will be around 1,000 a
And how
month.
many square feet?
I'm not sure.
And that's a one bedroom
Yeah,
for 1,000?
yeah. 1,015 is the studio rate. 1,088 is the one bedroom rate that is set by the Portland Housing Bureau.
And that's affordable housing?
That's the 60% MFI rental rate. And then there will be a range of rents in that building.
That doesn't seem very affordable.
Yeah,
I
that's,
mean, it does not seem affordable.
I know what you mean.
I mean, if you've got over $12,000 of rent, you've got to pay taxes on whatever you earn. You got to eat, you got to pay for your car, and insurance, I mean.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's the going rate.
Well, that's the,
Yeah, but if you've got affordable housing, that's not affordable.
that's the rate set by Portland Housing Bureau.
Yeah.
And they have to base the salaries on meeting those demands.
Right. So, this is probably a little hard to see, but this is the map of the projects in the neighborhood, but the ones that I described already. This is, the apartments will be nice. They'll have, the building's gonna have a club room, a media lounge. There's going to be a back area, like a green space out behind the building. There'll be bike storage, package delivery lockers. In the apartments, we'll have stainless steel appliances, quartz countertops, nice lighting, nice flooring, energy efficient washers and dryers. Every unit has washer and dryer in the unit.
Well, that's a plus.
That is a plus.
Yeah.
'Cause I know over
That's a
there,
plus.
but downstairs.
Yeah, that's a plus. If you got it in the apartment, that's
Yeah.
a plus.
Yeah,
What about parking for the tenants?
there will not be any parking as part of this project.
How
There,
many, how many units?
47,
And no parking?
correct. The city of
You're so
Portland.
close to the train.
That's the city's requirement.
I don't know.
You know, and there's most cities now, I mean, you go into the Bay Area too, Berkeley, Richmond, and like that too. So they build these things, they're called transit, and transit, they're at the transit spot. and there's apartments and so forth, townhouses. So, I mean, it's not just Portland, it's across the board.
Well, if across the board, they're trying to take cars away from people and make people take mass transit. Nobody wants to do that because they have to go to their jobs. They gotta transport whatever they need, and they don't have an hour to spend on max or whatever. So, 47 units, no parking, you're gonna create a real problem for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's thinking about these things, but clearly they're really not.
Yeah, the city planners they have plans.
We know who's thinking about it.
I know, and the plans are not healthy for neighborhoods. They're really not.
I mean, my other suggestion to put in is, I'm surprised that a lot of youngins that I know don't have driver's license. They have a car, and I'm like, oh, they have a bicycle, and that's to me, I think the market you're trying to tap into is the young working folks out there that are bicycling and, trying to, so I think that's your market, that's your.
But can they afford it?
Yeah, I think,
A lot of them are lower income.
Were there other locations that you looked at besides Lents?
Well, our company's done projects all over the place, but I don't know if you guys were here earlier when I was talking about all that. We've been doing projects in Lents for
Quite a while.
quite a while,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I heard that, but I didn't know if you had thought about building up elsewhere
well,
to
we have
spread out, to spread this joy out.
we are doing projects
We have a lot
all
of
over the
low
place.
income
Yeah.
housing in one great big area, which is
Go where
causing
the
a lot
money
of
is.
congestion.
They're going where the money is,
Yeah.
and everybody thinks building tenements in downtown Lens is what you need to do to make this all much better.
Okay.
Is the city providing incentives for you guys to do this?
No, this is totally market rate. The one incentive, so as I was describing, inclusionary zoning requires that you build 15% of your units as affordable units. And when you do that, you do get a reduction on your property taxes for 10 years. They ratio, so basically, the property taxes that apply to those units are exempted for 10 years.
Just that 15% of whatever is low.
Right.
So you get a 15%
There's no.
reduction, that's how you get paid back.
Well, it's not exactly 15% because the building also has the commercial space.
True.
And I've never understood how the city appraises buildings for how they, I guess it's the county, how they decide how much property tax they're going to charge you. But I know that the county will give us a number, here's your property taxes, and then they will do a calculation. I think it's based on square footage, so.
I think they cast chicken bones.
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, Foster.
They're more effective than TV.
This poor guy's been being.
So what did you guys pay for the land?
Well, we bought these two buildings. There's the existing Oddfellows Hall, and then the building next door to it, that the one that was damaged by a fire.
And what did you guys pay for those two buildings?
I want to say it was around $2.5 million, somewhere in that.
So it's not cheap. That's expensive. How many square feet total? The lots?
The total area is 13,000 square feet.
And you paid 2.7 million for 13,000 square feet of land?
I think so.
That's hard to believe.
Is that high or low?
For 13,000 square feet? I've got 13,000 square feet, I'll say for half of that.
Well,
And that seems like a
depending on where it is, I might be interested.
It's in Lents, you're saying. You guys love Lents.
What's the zoning? Commercial? CM1?
Yeah. I think it's CM3.
CM3? So how tall can you guys go?
Well, we're doing 5 stories, but I think we could go a lot taller.
Oh.
And this is the building, so what we've got here, this is the existing Oddfellows Hall. This is Ramona, this is 92nd. So on 92nd, the new part of the building, which is gonna go where the one that
You
was
tore
torn down was, is 4 stories. And then as you go farther back down Ramona, the other part is 5 stories. And that's intentional. We wanted to step it back so that it's not just overwhelming on the street front. And there's going to be different finishes and different styles of construction on these. The idea is to make it look less like one big building and more like a few small buildings, a cluster of small buildings.
Have you been reaching out to the residents for your design of the building?
This is it.
Any of your adjacent neighbors have you contacted?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm.
I presented this project at the Lents Neighborhood Association about a month ago as
How many
well.
were in attendance, do you remember?
A couple dozen. And mailers went out. We had signs posted, mailers went out. These are all requirements set by the city.
Interesting, because nothing went out. And I live in Lents, not too terribly far from there, and I've gotten
Walking
nothing.
distance, yeah.
Not zip, zilch, nada.
So do you
There's
have a community outreach team working for your company that does that, or do you just have to go by what the city requires?
We go by what the city requires. You're looking at it. Community outreach.
You guys, are there any plans for walls? Are people bidding on that property? What's happened with that property? The boys and girls? The big yard? The big.
I think that's theirs.
That does belong to them.
They own it.
So the big grass area, which does not include the Boys and Girls Club, is owned by Prosper Portland.
And is that you guys?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not Prosper Portland,
but that's who you work
but
for.
we haven't signed the papers yet, but we're talking to Prosper Portland about signing a 99-year lease on that land to build housing.
Oh, man.
And so Prosper Portland's the guy that came out to their last meeting or whatever? Is that the
Last
Prosper
meeting?
Portland? Kevin, he came out to do the cleaning?
Kevin, that was,
Was that Prosper Portland?
I don't even remember.
Prosper Portland is the old PDC, the old
Yes,
Portland.
yes, but he's asking if Kevin was with well, Kevin actually didn't come, he was supposed to be at this meeting.
Okay.
Kevin hasn't come yet.
But you guys are gonna lease, they're trying to lease that from them for 99 years.
Correct. And then we'll build 170 units of housing. That's all very conceptual right now. I'm sure I'll be back here to present that when we're at this stage with that project.
How far away are you guys from possibly getting something signed in writing with Portland Prosper to that lease?
I really don't know. These things seem to take forever. I'm always shocked at how long it takes, back and forth and back and forth. I mean, hopefully not too far.
Are you guys have any competition, or you guys got the only ones negotiating for that?
I think we're the only ones. I think they've tried to get other people interested and nobody else wanted, no other developers wanted to be.
Why do you think that is?
I think people just
Small
don't.
parcel.
I think
Not a
people,
very big parcel.
It's a huge parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It
big.
could be
Yeah.
a grocery store. I used to work for Portland Development Commission. We held on to that property for a long time. People have bounced ideas. We couldn't get anybody to come in for a grocery store, so I'm kind
Yeah.
of shocked that they're gonna lease that out.
I think people have tried, yeah, like you said, other developers have tried to make something work on that property and they just could never make it pencil.
I'm just hoping, and this is just me, because I used to do community outreach, is that you will reach out to everyone in the community when you develop your housing, because that's a huge piece of property. It could have been a real benefit to our community to have a grocery store there. We could have negotiated with the right people to get one from them, you know?
Sure,
It would have
sure.
been a huge benefit to our.
Well, you could probably answer, why have developers shied away from that location? Because of the,
Well, it hasn't been the right deal. It's a money maker. But they need to look at what's good for the community.
I know.
And they've been hesitant to do that because somebody wants to build housing on
Well, I think the way if I understand it right, is that Prosper decides what they want on that
They do.
land, and then they go and find a developer who's
They
willing
do.
to build that.
it. Exactly.
So it was them who made the decision, this should be housing. Perhaps, I don't know, you know more than I do, but maybe because they tried for a while to get a grocery store on there, but couldn't get anyone interested.
They think that that's politically expedient, that housing is the popular
It is.
way to go. Mixed use on that property as well?
No, that's just residential.
Really?
On the big one?
Correct.
Who's the head of, who runs Portland Process? Is there a chair, is there a committee, or who's on top of that?
They have their own commission. They have their own board of commissioners.
But I think what he's saying is who's the head of it?
They have
Well, no, I'm just wondering who we could contact as a neighborhood and say, listen, grocery store, or something other than housing would be appreciated. I think we are owed something other than housing.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that was tried over the years and failed,
The developers just didn't want to do it.
yeah. But the
It's not
neighborhood-
big enough. I mean, you're never gonna get Safeway or Fred Meyer to even look at it. Somebody talked about Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's says it's not big enough.
Whole Foods was another
And
one.
our demographic is so poor
That's the real issue.
that we
Is that the
can't
real issue?
support it.
That's the
And then
real-
somebody was talking about, well, we need to get the co-op from down on 20th and Powell to come up here. Our neighborhood is so poor, we can't support a co-op. You know, I mean, a C-store like what we've got there on Foster. You run in for maybe a loaf of bread, but you can get your pot, your CBD, your beer, your supplies, and
we've
a
got-
six-pack.
so-
He's gonna make money.
So we get nothing but affordable housing because we can't afford anything nice.
But we can't afford the affordable housing.
Agreed. Agreed.
Nobody, I don't think anybody in this room can afford to live in your building. Any of your
Well,
buildings.
if they could afford it, they wouldn't want to because they need more than 400 square feet.
Yeah. But this is what we're getting because this is all we deserve.
But you're saying that your previous properties are full?
The affordable housing, yeah, totally full.
Yeah, and it's going to be the same percentage on the bigger property of affordable housing, which is the minimum required by the city, right?
15%,
Yeah.
and the rest will be market rate housing.
Can I put my 2 cents in? There was a postcard I got, lucky postcard with the senior housing over there by, I think Union. It's the one with the balconies and they have a nice garden off 99
Union Manor.
Union Manor. And I was shocked for 540 square feet for almost $1,500 per month. And you got parking, you have air conditioning. Oh, by the way, you got air conditioning?
Yes.
Okay. But I mean, so that's what the market right now is for senior housing, you know, for.
What, I understand that you guys have to charge what you have to charge to make some profit. What's driving the cost so high for development?
Well,
What are the drivers?
market rates on rents, the price of construction, cost of land,
Permits.
permits, the cost of financing. I mean, we have to borrow money to do these things. And that is
There's not
one thing
one or
I
two
will say.
things. Not one or two things, it's kind of a combination of all.
Yeah, that's accurate, yeah. It's a lot of different things, and you know, it's
I mean,
hard to
what-
make these
what are your-
things
What are your
expensive.
permits per unit?
Boy, probably like $20,000.
Are they closer to
Well,
50 maybe?
Permits per unit, well, I don't know what the per unit cost would be.
I'm guessing they're closer to 50 than 20.
No, I don't think it's that high, actually.
Are
Let me
you guys
think.
getting any kind of break or something, or?
I think it's around, don't quote me on this, I would guess around $8,000 per unit is how much the city charges for a unit, for building permits.
So you guys don't pay system development charges?
Yes.
Well, those are 25, 30,000 minimum each. I mean, not each, but total for each unit.
That's for residential, for single family. I get there's a different rate for multifamily.
I think you're right, because if it was 50,000 a unit, you know, that'd be like $2.5 million in permit fees on this project, and I know it's not gonna be that much. I think, I'm expecting it to be around 600,000-700,000, something like that.
I
But
wonder
yeah.
where that cutoff is, because I know if you build like an 11-plex, you're paying residential
I do think they have different rates for SDCs for multifamily versus single-family housing.
Is there a location we can look at that presentation, where maybe we can pull it up when we get home and look at it?
What if I just email it to you? Sure.
Yeah, would be great.
Okay.
Thank
I'll
you.
email it to you one day if
Appreciate
you want it. I'll put it on our page.
Yeah, you can put it on our page or
Yeah.
on the page.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great. Sure thing.
okay.
So any other projects coming up besides this one in Laurel's?
Those are the only ones. You may be familiar with the Zoigel House Brewing Building. There is actually this other one.
What are they doing?
Zoigel House is staying,
Okay.
but the former carpet store north
Yeah.
of that
Oh, yeah.
building, it's part of the same property.
Right.
We are doing a public plaza. I mean, currently the farmer's market uses that parking lot. The idea is that carpet store will get turned into an indoor-outdoor dining pavilion that's open to the public, and the farmer's market will use that on Sundays, so they can set up indoors. And it's also available for, anybody to reserve for a public event. And
So there's a cost to that, I'm assuming, right, to use it for a public event?
I don't know. I think so, but it's probably not much. It's that project had a little bit of help from Prosper Portland, and that was part of the requirement, is that it has to be open to the public. I'm not sure if they set a limit on what you can charge for reserving the room.
They used to use Ramona Street a lot for public events, so they're probably wanting to move it over
Yeah, maybe so.
to a safer place. A question about that project. I know at one point they talked about having mixed use where businesses could be in that area as well, with the existing kind of roll up.
Yeah, so there's the carpet store. Behind the carpet store is the former paint shop.
Yeah,
That's going to turn into maker spaces.
okay.
And
We talked about that.
there'll be roll-up doors, bathrooms, everything, and those will be leased out to, maker spaces like manufacturing, maybe somebody who builds bicycle frames or makes clothes or backpacks or
So it could be
something.
a live and work use.
They won't be live work, no.
Okay.
Although this building that I'm presenting tonight does have one live work unit, which is on the ground floor facing on 92nd. And so the way that unit will be designed, the front part is sort of a public space and the rear part is a residential space. So somebody could live there and have a hair salon or office, counseling, taxes, something like that in the front.
Do you know on the 170 unit place at Laurel's, will there be any parking provided for that?
That one will have parking, yeah.
Do you know how many spaces?
I don't know yet, but I think a lot. I don't think it's going to be 170 spaces.
So are you guys already in the design phase of that then?
We're talking to some architects. I mean, we have some conceptual stuff yet, but it's not ready for prime time.
Is parking downstairs for that building, or where was the parking gonna be?
It'll be surface parking lot, paved parking,
Oh, okay,
not a garage.
not a garage.
Right.
Part, maybe that 0.7% that they talked about, because I think that's what, at the Oliver,
Right.
I think it's 0.7, except that that's all supposed to be just for the gym people, but it's actually being used by all of the buildings to park their cars, and the people who want to eat and drink across the street.
At the flip side place.
Flip side,
The
the
parking
carts
lot
in the bubble
by the
tea
gyms,
house.
yeah.
That you take your life in your hands driving through there.
To the parking lot.
Oh, no, it's just driving down, well, it's Woodstock at that point, but you take your life in your hands because of the people that are dashing from the gym parking lot across the street to go to the bubble tea house or go to Flipside in the cars. Because there's no parking over there. Because that's all residential and it's a dead-end street. And those poor people that live there can't get in and park in their own neighborhood because of what's going on with Flipside. And last time we had you guys at a meeting about that came up, And he said, oh, maybe, we thought about maybe we should go to, maybe assigned parking or parking cards or something for the, we didn't really think that there were gonna be that many people misusing the
Yeah.
parking lot. And it's the only flipping parking lot in Lents.
Well, I think they were counting on people just coming off of Max and not
Yeah.
people walking on the street.
Yeah.
There's more than that to Lens. It's a major thoroughfare.
That's because they're extremely myopic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that one right.
So that is something that maybe you could take back, that the parking is a huge issue, even just for the businesses that would consider going there. It's gonna limit. I mean, I'm limited. I drive by wanting to stop at that Refuge coffee shop, but there's never parking.
All right, drive on by.
And I have to drive on by because you gotta go or they'll run over you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really thorny problem in urban design these days, and I don't know what the solution is.
I think you're gonna find a lot of people double parking like New York.
Yeah. I mean, you have like the two extremes, right? New York, or, I mean, that's not even really the full extreme. The extreme would be a place with no cars at all, which many people would consider great for environmental reasons and also just for like urban, the quality of life. But you've got places that are very dense and very little parking. I mean, the Pearl in Portland is probably the closest thing we have to that. And on the other extreme, you've got where I'm from, Albuquerque, New Mexico, where it's just oceans of asphalt. 4 to 5 spaces of parking for every car that exists in the city. And I can tell you, that's horrible. That is not a great place to live either. So there is a balance, and it's tough. City planners are always trying to answer this question, and as developers, we're trying to.
Well, they're pushing that agenda really hard. I mean, we've already been spaced out of 2 lanes of traffic on Foster trying to get in and out of downtown, which doubles our time to give to bicyclists who don't pay a thing to the community. And I very rarely see them using it because half of them are blocked by homeless people. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be so critical, but I'm being realistic. A lot of times I would utilize that little small parking lot right where that black and white mural was to even go to like the restaurant there, the little Mexican restaurant, or any of those areas to get coffee or anything. So it would be nice to have like a couple of spaces for businesses to come in and go out in your planning if that's.
Well, it's gonna hurt you guys if you guys can't provide parking to the businesses.
It's gonna be like the other businesses. There's not gonna be any businesses that are gonna be able to survive there.
You're right.
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I don't have the answer. We
It'd
just
be nice to
we
address
do our
it.
best.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Was that why Robert Gibson decided not to come to our meeting? He wanted you to get beat up.
We're not beating, I'm not beating him up.
No,
I know
they
where he
have no
sits.
choice.
Yeah.
He has to go out into the community and talk to us. I've
Yeah.
been on that end. So it's frustrating for a lot of people that live here that express these ideas but are never heard.
Or never implemented.
And they never want to hear.
Yeah.
Some of them don't want to ever hear. And it's just really important for people in the development stages to hear what.
Yeah.
We're tax-paying people that care about our community, even care about the people that are on the street, but it's, we're not heard a lot of times.
Well, trust me, we are aware of those issues. We definitely hear those. We hear it a lot, but.
Well, I know you guys hear it, but what do you guys do about it? And again, I'm not beating you up. I don't think anybody's here beating you up. We just are very frustrated as a group because we got a lot of people like you that come here that say, we hear what you're saying, but absolutely nothing ever is done to respond to what we're saying. And it's really frustrating.
I don't know if I'd agree with that. I mean, I think the city really is who drives the requirements for parking and how much parking you're allowed to have and how much you're required to have, and they have a grand plan for what we're moving towards. And projects like we're just trying to take this neighborhood and bring some more action in trying to
More
bring people,
affordable.
more people.
Yeah,
And-
affordable housing.
Just
Well,
barely a percentage though. 15% is not a lot of affordable
Yeah,
housing.
that's very few units of
Yeah, that's a
affordable
drop in the
housing.
bucket. It's not gonna make a dent on the people living along Foster or in the crevices.
Well, and you're not benefiting me.
Right.
Not benefiting.
I live
Right.
4 blocks south of Foster, and none of this home improvement nonsense is of any benefit to me, except there's more congestion, traffic is worse, so navigating around to get out of Lents so that I can go to the grocery store, get my nails done, get a haircut, have a meal. I got 2 Mexican places, and they're both are good food, but sometimes you want something a little different than Mexican. But nothing that the city has done for us has improved our lives. It's made it worse because everybody's taking the Max train, everybody's riding a bicycle, nobody's driving. But boy, I'll tell you what, traffic has gotten horrible in the last 4 years.
I have experienced that.
And what else are we benefiting from? What else are we getting out of all of this improvement in Lent? Nobody's listening to what the people, the property owners, and I think we all own property. We're all property owners. Well, most of us are retired, so we don't have a lot of expendable income. Some of us have expendable income, but most of us don't. And nobody has asked what would make your life better and less as a property owner.
Well, one thing I can say is as a property owner, your property values are definitely gone up.
Well, if you're gonna sell, I guess that's okay.
I just sold the property and that is not true.
For those of us who have no means of selling our property in Florida, I don't really care if it goes up or not, that just means my taxes go up. And again, what have I benefited if my property taxes go up and my income doesn't?
Sure.
Or my income goes up $10 and my property taxes go up 25.
Sure.
Where's my benefit?
And one of the frustrating things for us in Southeast Portland is we pay by far the most property taxes, by far. Northeast Portland and North Portland, you've got homes selling for $1 million that pay less than $3,000 a year in property taxes. And this has been going on for years.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, because we were the last one before Measure 97 or 95 went through to be reassessed. And so you've got properties in North and Northeast Portland that are selling for $1 million, they're paying less than $3,000 a year in property taxes. I pay over $5,000 a year, and I couldn't sell my property for $400,000 right now. I've got homeless people like you wouldn't believe across the street. I can't sleep at night, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So this is, you're coming to the lion's den, and I hope we're showing you respect, but we're very frustrated.
I hear that.
Going to sleep to the sound of gunfire is not my idea of bedtime music.
Right.
I just think it's probably a lesson in, just taking back what you can to your design team, thinking about what we've said and respectfully trying to get as much parking or whatever as you can.
Sure.
We don't want to beat you up because you're just, but it is, you're hearing the frustration.
Yeah.
I have more than just myself. My whole family lives here. And it's very hard right now to navigate some of those areas that you're building in. And anyway,
It's going to get worse, too.
it's frustrating, but if you can just take anything that we've said back to make it better, that's what I personally would appreciate.
So would I.
Is it possible to have that rezoned from residential to commercial to the lot next to Zoodle House there and make that some kind of food store?
Changing zoning is very difficult. It's very rarely done. I mean, yes, it is possible, but it requires a lot of money and a lot of time.
Didn't the city of Portland just change every single zone in the city because some people were complaining about narrow lots?
They did do a bunch of changes to the zoning
Like
lately.
single family, multifamily, everything got changed because some residents complained about narrow lots.
They did change a lot about the zoning, but as far as I know, they didn't change anything from commercial to residential or from residential to commercial. Everything basically stayed what it was, but the requirements for building on those lots changed. The way that they evaluate whether you meet zoning code changed, but they didn't change things.
Well, did they get
between
rid of
uses.
garages on every lot that's not at least 36 feet wide?
I don't know.
Are we ready to move on to Bill?
Any more questions for this nice gentleman?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Of course.
Thank you.
Did a good job.
We'll have our bodyguard escort.
Yes.
I have a question. The person was here, we were voting on what kind of gazebo we're doing for the park. What happened with that?
You'd have to ask the Lnla.
Oh, okay.
They were the ones that took the header, you know, the header that was on the old gazebo and stored it. But I have no idea
No,
where.
I thought they were gonna build a new one.
They were gonna build a new one, that they were gonna put that header back on the new one.
It's probably with the copper penny sign.
It could be. In the basement of the Eagle Eye.
The basement of the Eagle Eye, yes ma'am.
I don't know, yeah, I don't know what happened. And tonight's meeting for the Lnla was canceled at the last moment.
The gazebo was something that was talked about a lot when they redeveloped Lents Park.
Right.
Parks knew that there was no money in the budget for a gazebo.
Okay.
So they went through the motions with it, that there's probably never going to be a gazebo there.
Okay, so they even talked about that space.
The piece that they saved of it, that probably is in someone's basement, but we don't know.
Has anybody seen the intersection of Foster and Holgate right there, like 60th or 58th? And that beautiful plaza they just put in there?
No.
Yeah, they put in a beautiful plaza, probably cost $1 million, maybe, right on Foster and Holgate.
It's where Holgate crosses
where they
Foster.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they put in this beautiful, beautiful plaza. I'm guessing $1.2 million project, but they don't have any money for Lents.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
That's for not staying, but
Good job.
I'm
No,
sorry.
good job. No, you did a good job.
You're probably
Have they taken the fence down off around that
Thank
Hancock?
you all.
Well, they got rid of all the campers that were there forever. They put in the fence up and they're doing this incredible
My
thing.
question was, had they finished it and taken the fence down so the campers could move back in and have the beautiful plaza? Anyway, so much for that. Hi, Bill.
Hey!
Welcome to a nice, quiet, peaceful meeting.
No, I live in this world too, and I share the same.
Bill's going to tell us how his organization actually is helping some of these people out here that we're dealing with.
What's honest and what's sad, as I drive in on Foster from 162nd, I think of how few of those people that we can actually help. And so just really quickly, Union Gospel was created in 1927, so we're going on our 100th year. But from 1927 to 1987, most of our clientele were older men who drank too much cheap wine, lost their job, lost their wife, lost their place, came down, got sober, 30 days, beans, Bible, bacon, bed, and you're home. It was pretty easy. I was born in 1954, but I had a sister born in 44. So when I was a little kid, she was playing 50s music. She had 45 records. And from 3 years old on, I loved Elvis Presley. I loved those records. When I turned 9, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Animals came in. Everyone gave away their 45 records and started buying LPs from England, right? That was what everyone did. But I really loved 45, so I would go to thrift stores and buy 45s for a penny or a nickel or a box of them or whatever. So it took me to Skid Row because thrift stores back in the 60s were usually in a Skid Row. So I became really comfortable with and kind of learned how to navigate as a young guy around older alcoholic men. My dad was an alcoholic. He's now dead. He ended his life really well, but for years he was a working alcoholic. He never lost his job, but he was drunk every day, and I learned how to navigate him. So, and then when I decided to be different, my dad was a truck driver, I started working with the Teamsters. I decided to leave there and go to law school. And I went to law school, I became a lawyer, and I gotta tell you, as my law practice grew, my alcohol use grew. I mean, I was an adult son of an alcoholic. It was my way of coping with stress. And after a while, I was having a hard time managing my alcohol intake. So I became sober for the first time since college, right? So how was it for me to practice law after I was sober? I hated it. I had no tool really to handle the stress and anxiety. So I started pursuing options in my life. I started looking at spirituality. I started looking at what's the matter with me? Why am I so tightly wound and anxious and so dependent on alcohol and drugs? And I had a rock band when I was young, and it was still going, but I was like in no man's land. You get what I mean? I didn't fit in law. I no longer fit in the band. I was out of college. But the last thing I did as a lawyer was serve as a deputy prosecutor. And it actually reconnected me to the people who I had met when I was using drugs, or the people I met when I was going down to Skid Row. It reconnected me to people who live in the margins, people who have a hard time navigating. So what happened to me is I bonded more to the people I was prosecuting. Does this make sense, or am I talking crazy? Like I related better to them, and I went home every day regretting that I wasn't helping them, but I was just locking them up. And I started hating my job and myself. This is turning into like a mental health therapy. Although one of the things I did as a prosecutor was I did mental health commitments. And I actually felt really good about that. Because you were taking people who were batshit crazy. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for the gospel mission. And I'm saying the word batshit, but it's the truth. They were a danger to themselves and others. And it wasn't a horrible thing to get them hospital care and get them long-term care, get their meds stabilized, and get them out of being dangerous, right? So I actually felt good about that. And there were a lot of hilarious stories, probably the funniest situations. I mean, some of the funniest people I met knew they were struggling with mental health and were just hilarious in dealing with it. I mean, not sad hilarious, but funny. Anyway, but I had to make a change. So moving from prosecution, I started as a prison chaplain. Like, we got to solve crime problems. We got to solve chronic poverty. You know, I became a real bleeding heart cause guy. And after about 5 years of that, I spent all my time in the community trying to build support systems for people. This is back in the 80s. And it's like, we gotta do something other than just whacking people or doing nothing. There's gotta be some in between. I saw too many people who never caught on. Either they partied their way through high school and didn't learn jack in high school, or they somehow missed it. Maybe their parents were busy, or they didn't have good, whatever it was. I wasn't blaming anybody, but it's like, I'm pragmatic and I'm compassionate. How do we help this person where they are today? And so I focused the last 3 years of working with corrections on nothing but ex-prisoners. How do we keep this person productive and out of prison? How do we build networks, bridges into a good life rather than a dependence? I knew so many guys and women where the only place they had an identity that they felt good about was back in prison. They were known, they had a reputation, they were skilled, and outside they felt like nobodies, and I thought that's got to change. So anyway, in 1989, the board of directors at Union Gospel had seen this swell of drug addiction replace the older wino. You know what I mean? Like that older alcoholic male, we found a way to get him on Social Security, get him in the McDonald's Center, get him in SROs. That problem like disappeared in a couple years. But in its place were 3 different major groups of people. And the Joint Office on Homelessness will say Bill doesn't know what the heck he's talking about, but I do.
Wait, say it again? What?
The Joint Office on Homeless City County, they say I don't know what I'm talking about. Mark Olin,
Yes.
Deb Kafori,
Yeah.
Wheeler, they think I'm a nut job.
That's all right, we like nut jobs.
Yeah,
We
but,
specialize in.
and that's not totally, I've already confessed to you, it's not totally untrue. But here's what I do know, and this is just the facts. If you walk along the bike trail that runs on 205, if you mix in with the people who are in RVs between 205 and 122nd along Foster, or farther, if you dig along the Springwater Trail and just dig into the bushes, in most homeless camps you're going to see something on the ground that is orange.
Yep. Lents orange blossoms.
Right, Lents orange. That is people who are either shooting heroin or meth or both. Okay? So what I've learned over the years, and it's just a fact, that someone shooting black tar heroin has to generate, on average, 60 to 80 bucks a day. Okay? I've known one man and one woman over the last 40 years who can hold a steady job shooting black tar heroin. And that those 2 people are incredibly skilled. I asked them both, how did you do it? And they said, I don't know, I just did it day to day. There's one woman I can't mention. We pulled her out of jail, put her through our program about 5 years ago. She's now on a very high, she's so functional that when you got the heroin problem fixed, she went to college, she took off, and she's in industry, and she's rocking it. But her problem was opiate abuse, right? And the delivery system, it's complicated to get an opiate addict off of opiate. One thing we had going for her 5 years ago that we lost is she was incentivized by something to get off heroin. What was it?
Jail.
Jail. Yeah, she had gone to jail a number of times. She was looking at a stretch as being a repeat offender. And not just a user, but she got caught doing the things she had to do to garner the money. Because even though she kept her job, she couldn't make enough money to pay all her bills and save a little bit every day and go buy Mexican black tar heroin, shoot it, and then wake up and then go to sleep, and then wake up in the morning and have enough for her get well hit and go to work and then do that again. So she had to supplement it with crime, and she got caught. And so, but once she got caught and she was on parole, she had to do UAs so that if she was dirty, what would happen?
She'd go back.
Yeah, that would violate her. We have really taken that incentive way down.
Oh, yeah, there is none.
Way down. You could still get caught. I know a girl who, she's doing really, really well right now. She didn't get busted for shooting meth. She got busted for the identity theft that was funding her meth. And with that correctional incentive, what did it do? It forced her to deal with, do you want your baby back? Your child back? Do you want that? And so we've got right now 40 women and kids in a center, and all those women are incentivized, not by Oregon law. That's really reduced the incentive if you're for heroin and meth possession. Instead, she's incentivized by getting her kid back from DHS. So parts of the system actually can incentivize people, much less incentive for men in our program. And we have more men in our program than women, because we have more men. You can throw 20 men in this room and put them all in quarantine one at a time, make sure they don't have COVID, put them all in this room, and men in recovery become a band of brothers, And you get them working together and they're golden. They want to be productive. They pursue sobriety. If we can get them in the room and get them on a team and get them to work. Although I ran into a guy today down in Old Town who I said, why did you leave program? He said, well, I came in a drug addict, but you're making me a workaholic. I go, hey bro, working 40 hours a week is not a workaholic. It's called normal. It's called what all of us have to do to pay taxes, now to pay for your room down here. But you would be happier with yourself in life if you joined us. And he said, I just can't take it. And I thought, maybe he was pretty new and he might have mental health everybody gets mental health in our place. We do an assessment, but sometimes it takes a while to figure out what's really going on. And I always think the Bible says if a man will not work, neither shall he eat. But if he can't work, we go to homeless camps all the time. For whatever reason, about 80 to 90% of the people I meet in a homeless camp cannot work a 40-hour work week. Now, there are things that can be done to get them ready to work a 40-hour work week. But for our Life Change program, you've got to, when you step in the door, you're working 8 hours that day. So we're working with tools, like we're pulling a person a day out of homelessness. And we come to camps at 92nd and Flavel. We come to camps in this neighborhood. We ran a shelter right across the street from your neighborhood, across Powell over at Central Nazarene. Between October 1 through the end of March, we had 380 unique individuals come in and use that shelter.
Was that the one on Powell up on the hill?
Yeah, it's on Powell up on the hill.
So
we
are
used
those
their
little houses full, or?
So let's talk about those little houses. You could have 15 people living up in those cute little houses. We're all looking, not at the one point in time homeless camp that says there's 5,000. There are days when I think there are 5,000 homeless people just in Lents.
I think
there are.
Because those homeless counts don't dig in the bushes. Those homeless counts happen in the middle of winter where people have to be inside, not outside. So I think those homeless counts are male bovine fecal matter.
We
That's me personally.
We agree.
But, so 15 houses on the hill doesn't really excite me, although I like Pastor Matt up there. He's a great guy. He worked with the homeless in Kansas City. I knew him when he was a pastor in Prineville. He did great organizing. He is a great guy. I love having him as right across from your neighborhood. But those 15 people, it's better than being in a ditch. But 15 people among what Portland State said is 17,000 in this area in a full year. 15 people's like microscopic.
Well, it's kind of like Corey's building downtown that she wanted to convert.
Right.
What was it, 10, 16 maybe?
Yeah.
What?
So 17,000 what?
Men, women, and kids who are homeless in a year in Portland.
So the incentive, so do you work with mental health and the jail system?
Yes and yes.
I mean, there's no incentive for them to get off the street.
You're right. So we have case people who say, hey, there's a person who's tired of living this way. Do you have a bed? Or there are people that, the system's kind of waiting for them to say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's not system incentive. That's just kind of like personal incentive. And so I advocate, my board of directors, I'm no longer the executive director of Union Gospel Mission. I had done that from 89 to earlier this year, and I retired because it was a long, good career. I want to repurpose. I want to do something else. But when I was director, I wanted to oppose Measure 110, which decriminalized heroin and meth. Mm-hmm. But the board wouldn't let me. There was no agreement on it. And I'm not faulting them. Everybody gets, has their own opinion. I'm not really that political, but that was going to be the one time in the 31 years I was here that I wanted to oppose something, because I've seen so many people get help when they're correctionally incentivized to deal with their issue. And so whether it's, there are a lot of, I think, experimental beliefs. Let's experiment with the idea that we could take heroin and meth and make it legal because somehow it worked in Portugal. And I watched Johan Hari's TED Talk and I thought that makes sense. But Portuguese is not Lents. Portugal is not the United States of America. Portugal does not have the same level of systemic racism and the same volume of illegal drug use and addiction. It just doesn't. And so it's like to me, Portugal is like the 15 houses. Like, what a cute idea.
Yeah.
But now we're experimenting with Oregon. Is property crime going to go up?
Yes.
And I've been talking to the Associated Press on this and NPR about how do you measure it? Because you know dang well that the traffic policies in the city is increasing carbon emissions and doing exactly what it was supposed to fix. It's making greenhouse gases worse. It's making the environment worse. It's going to make climate change worse because cars sitting in a long line make pollution worse and make the environment worse. So I don't care what they say, why they're doing it. Their experiment is not working. Their experiment said we're going to have less cars and more people taking the bus, the MAX, walking and riding bikes.
Yep.
But when you look at the number, maybe their experiment will pay off in 30 years. I don't know, I'm not a crystal ball seer. But so far, since they launched the experiment to narrow Foster and to not build roads and to have way more people move in, it's generating more carbon emissions.
You should have talked to that guy over there.
What's that?
You should have talked to that guy.
Well, he's got nothing to do with it.
Nothing.
The city won't let him build parking spaces because they're forcing their experiment on all of us, and it's killing the environment so far.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll pay off. Maybe my kids who are in their 30s, and my oldest is 40, she thinks way different than me. She thinks it's a great idea. She might be wrong because the old man's been wrong a lot. But so far, the policies that have said, here's our solution to homelessness. 2004, this is what we're going to do, National Alliance. We're going to say there's 2 tools we're going to use to solve homelessness. We're going to use HUD-funded shelters and permanent supportive housing. Okay? Right?
Was this Portland or is this national?
This is national. So I was saying, wait a minute, the supply chain's going to lag. And I'm working with Homer Williams, who, you know, was the South Waterfront thing.
Small village.
And we're trying to get pop-up camps going.
Right.
Because when you look at the number, 17,000 people, just run the math. The Portland Metro housing bond was $252 million. So, how many units per million do you get to open? You spend $1 million, how many affordable housing units do you have? Anyone?
What's the answer?
4!
Wow.
So 4 times 250, you open up about 1,000 units with that. I think they can get 1,300.
Yes.
And we're talking about 17,000. And if you don't cut off the pipeline, the inflow, if you assume that these 17,000 are just going to reduce year by year, 1,300 at a time, you are more batshit crazy than I am. Because the vector that increases homelessness has to be, the pipeline's got to be cut off. So you got to go in and say, okay, what presenting problems have caused, you know, pork chop was, how many of you were here last time that pork chop was here? Okay, there's 2 words that come to mind with pork chop.
Just 2.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of words in there. He's been a friend of mine, but he's episodically struggles with mental health.
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, there's things going on with him tonight, even if someone said, you know, hey, it might be a good idea not to bring him, because he would be interrupting me, talking over me. But there are other things that block him from coming tonight that have to do with mental health. Now, where does Oregon rank in terms of mental health delivery?
I'd say 0.
Nearly the bottom.
Right at the bottom. And some things have us at 51, like Puerto Rico makes us out. And I love Puerto Rico.
Wait, say that again?
We're at the bottom of the the combination of people who need mental health and the availability of mental health.
Services, yeah.
Right. So again, at the time that I was doing mental commitments, mental institutions were on the decline. And there was a great New York Times article that described all of the various factors. A lot of people just summarized it and said Reagan closed the mental hospitals, and there's a truth in that, but there was a lot more going into that.
A lot of advocacy against having those.
Yeah, I mean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest made it distasteful to even like them. And federal judges who weren't Reagan appointees were closing them down left and right, saying it was cruel and unusual. But what's cruel and unusual to me in Oregon is that there's about 5,000 inmates in the Oregon correctional system that are severely mentally ill, and there's only about, 1,500 people at the state mental hospital. So we've just moved the clientele from Damish, from the old Damish. And I think of Damish too because the women's prison of Coffee Creek's there. And one of the women in Coffee Creek is a woman named Rachel Beatrice, and we always called her B. I don't want to say her last name. And everybody called her B, but her middle name. And she bounced around in front of the mission for years. And she would really get out of it mentally. And the staff or the guys at the mission would call for mental health intervention. And there just wasn't the funding to help her. So there was about 2 years ago, last month, she was having a psychotic break and she took off all her clothes. She's an attractive, about a 30-year-old girl, but just out of her mind. And she's dancing at the corner of 3rd and Burnside.
She should come here, the guys are tired of seeing the old women do that.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you get that out here, but it was just like, and so they really, she was in the street, cars were missing her, and, so they called for a police cruiser. And, we hear the problems police have and the resource limitations they have, even more now than 2 years ago. And there were things going on. They just pulled up and over the loudspeaker said, "B, put your clothes on," and rolled off. Those are like the mental health stories that I laugh at. But what's sad behind it is within about 2 years ago, this month, she was raped out on the street. And in her state, she knew who her rapist was, and she went to his tent and she lit it on fire.
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her. The problem is,
unfortunately,
nothing happened to a rapist,
right.
But she got 5 years, 10 months for first-degree arson and attempted murder.
Tent.
What?
For burning his tent.
For burning his tent with him in it. So, I mean, as a former prosecutor, I get that. You can't let people light tents on fire with people in it in the manner she did with an accelerant and not have some response. But the system is not currently saying, hey, you know what? She's mentally ill. She needs help. I mean, early on,
So
before this happens.
5 years worth of help instead of 5 years of incarceration.
The good thing for her is she's about halfway through her sentence, almost. And she's getting meds every day. She's got a case manager every day. She has mental health therapy all the time. She's doing better than she's done in the last 10 years. But let me ask you the question, is it just or right to have them do that at Coffee Creek rather than community-based mental health? Rather than sitting here. So it's very complicated. It's really complicated with drugs. It's really complicated with mental health. Now, I think there are good things happening with the higher barrier mentally ill. We have like I said earlier, we have put 150 women and kids in the last year off the streets through and into transitional housing and then out into permanent supportive housing. And I like that. I mean, I think that's the most valuable thing I've done in my whole life. Because if you bring moms and kids in who've been through trauma and they go through recovery together and they get mental health together and they go through a whole process together and then they get a house together, guess what the statistics show? 91% of them stay sober, stay healthy, and stay together. And so that, you know, I'm after results. I'm after compassionate results. That's what I want to get. So I really like that. But those are higher barrier. You know, when Mackenzie and her daughter were in this neighborhood, they were sleeping in a car, but they weren't in the car along Foster. You know, they popped here and there. They moved neighborhoods. They moved every night. And it was tragic, but it wasn't an eyesore. Here's my bottom line. Whatever statistics you see, most of what you hate in this neighborhood is generated by mental health and drug addiction. Mm-hmm. Most of what you hate, most of what erodes your quality of life, most of what generates property crime, most of what makes it unsafe is not Mackenzie and her daughter. As much as I want to get them out, we've had some badass women come to our center who were dangerous criminals. But most of them are abused women who are just trying to navigate back into normal life. I'm just telling you the truth. And I don't mind getting the badass women. I think it's great when they get around health and get around addiction recovery and go through it. But most of the people here, and I've said this for years, when I go up to the shelter, we'll have 80 people in there a night in the middle of winter that make up for 60 people or 40, depending on the severity of the weather. Because when we open it up, we don't just open it up cold weather. We open it up every night in November, every night in December, every night in January. So there are some nights where the weather's pretty good and people don't want our rules. They don't, you know, they want a little freedom or whatever. But every time I go up there and our case managers ask the question, who in this room, like, all of you in this room are responsible, just looking at you. Now, I might be overstating it. A couple of you could be imposters and, you know, you're really acting irresponsibly. But when I go into a day room that we run or I go into a shelter that we run, I look around and say, who's ready to mobilize out of a totally dependent, street-driven life? Whose mental health is ready? Whose addiction is ready? Who's ready? And like I said earlier, it's usually only 5 to 10% of the people in there. So our case managers are working every day. Every day they pull one of those people off the streets. And so give us 17,000 days and we'll make it, right? If nobody else adds to it.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of the great things that's happened for us is opening Wapato, because that's beds for us. We're one of the major feeders of people into Wapato.
Cool.
So if you see our love van in the neighborhood, the little
Lakes Hope Center.
Yeah, Bobby Lakes. So
What is your van?
What? Our van has love on it. It's a van with big letters that say love on it, or there's one that says hope on it. There's a hope van and a love van.
Where is your location? Do you guys have multiple churches or just one thing?
Our base in Portland is at 3rd and Burnside.
Okay.
But we used the gym out there, and then our Women and Children's Center is out in Beaverton. And then we got a thrift store out across from the Tigert Cinemas. But mobile outreach is what's made us more relevant. And we started that in August of 2016. So we're up on our 5th anniversary of mobile outreach. We're doing 70 homeless camps a week, about 900 people a week. And what's our goal with all those 900 people? Some people say, well, you feed the cats and the cats are going to breed, right? Because my aunt had feral cats and she fed them and there were like 100 of them. And as a little kid, I couldn't go out there because I was afraid I was going to get scratched and get sick or something. And it wrecked her backyard. But we don't overdo the food, but we want connection to people. And so we believe if you provide minimal care, but basic care, and you connect with people, you can coach them out of homelessness, those who are capable, or you can get them to resources. So we send a night van out, it's going out tonight, to about 10 camps. And then we'll send a van out to those 10 camps tomorrow to do follow-up work and pick up the 1, 2, 3 people who want to move out. So that's been our biggest advent. Yeah, back there, and I'll come up here.
In San Francisco, I know they have a program where they have people cleaning up the streets or,
Yes.
some kind of purpose, and then they pay them with gift cards, merchant cards.
Yeah.
Do you or anything like that?
No, Portland's got a number of work programs to help clean up the streets. Central City Concern is the biggest one who will employ people.
Grounds for.
Yeah, but they don't, Oregon won't let us pay laborers. You can have program beneficiaries get something less than minimum wage. Somebody sued the Salvation Army, the Ninth Circuit Court said, a program beneficiary is not an employee, you don't need to pay him wage. But if you hire a person to do a job, the Oregon Supreme Court said that person's an employee. They're not getting all the benefits of a program beneficiary. So you have to give them, if you're going to give them merchandise cards, you got to give them that which equals, what is it, $16.25? Where are we at now in Portland?
Yeah, hourly wage.
I'm too old to remember that stuff. But I'm sure if I was making minimum wage, I'd know it.
But the city concerned, so the ones that are cleaning up, do they use people that are homeless?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think they've been a great ally. We've sent numerous people to Hooper Detox over the years, and a number of our graduates have lived in their housing, and a number of our graduates have worked with their programs. So, you know, we're collaborative. So people come in and get mental health, they get addiction recovery, they get work therapy, but when they're ready to work, we'll send people all sorts of places to get that work.
Wasn't Hooper the one they shut down?
What's that?
Wasn't Hooper the one they shut down where they were picking up people and sending them over there for
Yeah, they quit.
getting clean? Didn't they stop?
They've reduced their services, but they're still doing some services.
Are they still doing that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Hooper, I mean, COVID really impacted a lot of us.
Oh, I thought it was more of the violent people they were getting in there that their
Well,
staff couldn't deal with. Or
They get
something.
that too. We still have a nurse that works in their services, yeah.
I used to work down at your place,
Yes,
and
yes.
so I was in and out of Chinatown in that area all the time.
Yes,
And I think probably the young gentleman we were talking to earlier, this brought it to mind, is there were so many affordable
yeah,
housing projects down there.
yes.
But what we found is that you would put them in there and they would destroy them.
That's it.
And so even, you know, I felt bad, you know, here he is, hearing all of us, but even though you have affordable housing and you put people in it, a lot of times they just destroy
They're
it.
not ready for it.
Well,
They're not ready. And
what
so-
you're talking about is the housing first policy.
Yeah.
So if we get a person in our program who's addicted to heroin, we're not going to get them an apartment until they can manage an apartment, right?
Right.
So they have to stop using heroin and go through all the passages of recovery to be clean and sober and established and deal with underlying mental health issues and do work training so they have something to pay their apartment with. Then you can move them into an apartment. I'll just say this, because I really was interested. NPR in 2016 reported that Salt Lake City had reduced homelessness by 90%.
It was
And so I went, great, I want to see, I know a lot of people in Salt Lake. I knew Chris Crosswhite, who runs an organization there. I knew the affordable housing people, the corporation that did it, through a national panel I was on. And so I went there and got open doors and spent a week in Salt Lake City. And the major affordable housing units were housing first units. In other words, they were taking heroin addicts from the Rio Grande neighborhood and giving them units on a basis of who's been out the longest and who applied first and who was in this giant, similar to transition projects in Bud Clark Access Center. It was a little bit smaller and had a little more people in it than we would allow. But it was called the Road Home. So people would come in, do their time, sign up, wait their turn, and go get housing across town at the affordable housing unit. So they swept everyone up into the Road Home, and that was solving it at the shelter. And then first come, first serve, without any recovery, they went over into the affordable housing units. And so I went to the Road Home, and I saw that the Road Home was destroying the Rio Grande neighborhood. And you could read about this in the years after 2016. Because they would empty the Road Home out of 1,200 residents, 1,500 residents, and they would flood into the Rio Grande neighborhood and just, you know, destroyed this nice art gallery neighborhood. And I thought, well, I understand the concept, but it doesn't look like, And then I met a lot of people who were leaking out back into homelessness. Wasn't count time because count was done in February. This was in July. And I said, are you on the road home? And they go, no, it's too crowded in there and it's too long of a wait for affordable housing. And then one guy said, well, I was in the affordable housing, but I can't live there. And I go, well, why? And he said, I can't sleep there. There's too much crime there. I go, this guy's just BSing me. I thought he's BSing me. You know, because you hear excuses as to why people are homeless. And so I called the guy with the corporation. I said, can I go in there tonight? And he goes, yeah, here's the manager. So I went over and got that. So I went over at 10 o'clock that night because I wanted to see it. I didn't want the kiss up tour, you know, where you see all the clean units and everything else. So I hooked up with the manager and he said, yeah, come on in at about 9. He goes, it's a little rough at 9. So I get there and there's like 3 cop cars here. And so I roll up and they got blue lights on. I go, hey, I got an appointment in here. Can I get in here? Was there something bad that happened? He goes, hey buddy, there's something bad that happens here every night. This is our number 1 911 call. Every night. And I thought, well, that makes sense to me. That's kind of what I guessed would happen if you take active meth and heroin users and give them an apartment. The meth users cook meth and blow it up. There's going to be a fire call. I mean, not every night. You know, I'm exaggerating. But something bad's going to happen. You take volatile, mentally ill people and give them an apartment without support, and what happens? So, I mean, it was a well-intended solution. But if you go to Salt Lake, that 90%, the homeless camps crept back up, and there was a high turnover, recidivism rate. Now, Housing First was modeled after programs in Saskatchewan, BC, way different culture. Suburban Vermont, way different culture. I mean, you have to look at the presenting problem and saying, is your solution going to fix the presenting problem? So those, you know, when you pack people into affordable housing who are mentally volatile, or still using heroin and meth, something bad's going to happen. Because they need to get their heroin and meth somewhere, and the volatile person's going to go off like pork chop.
So what do you project for Portland for this area? What do you?
I mean, what we're hoping on the board.
Real good solutions.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Harbor of Hope, and I like what we're doing on our mobile outreach. I like the bigger collaboration that's starting to happen. But I don't know if it's going to get here in time. And I don't know when elected officials are going to change their policy. They're going to back away from the idea that if you take any remedy other than shelter and permanent supportive housing, you're eroding the system. You know what I mean? That's really the policy of National Alliance to End Homelessness. If you have pop-up camps, you're an enemy to the system. You're an enemy of the 10-year plan. You're the enemy to the joint office. Mark Jolin doesn't want pop-up camps.
So what you're saying is what you're doing.
We're going to question back to you, and I'll come back to you.
Oh, I was just wondering, do you think they're going to do some mental health clinics, walk-in clinics, or something more for people that are very vulnerable? And, you know, like you said,
Okay, I'll just be truth. I've given up on trying to help mental health in Multnomah County. I'm starting to work in Salem. So I just signed up with the legislature to be on a task force down there. I don't know what's going to get us out of the bottom of the heap. There's all this dependency on our public money. You see how public money is spent in Portland. It doesn't go to Lents.
No.
Because there's dependency on it in other places. And so there are all these public funding deserts. And the whole state is a mental health funding desert. And so we're trying to restart something that hasn't been in existence since 1980. I mean, that's a long time. It's 40 years of spending no money. And our state would have gone broke if we didn't get a huge cash influx from federally borrowed money. You know what I mean? So it's not sustainable. I don't have an answer to it. I think what we're doing is combining peer mentors and volunteers with staff and then professionals. But you can't professionalize everyone in the system. Anytime you take HUD money, you have to have one clinical supervisor for every 5 staff. all those people have to get prevailing wage, which means the supervisor needs prevailing wage, all 5 of the clinicians. You just run out of money too soon to meet our problem. So I'm not against, I mean, my dad was a union guy. I was a county attorney at one point. I understand public employee and prevailing wage, but you simply can't solve the problem by spending money that way. It's too big. So we have to come up with other solutions. Homer's coming up with this idea that I think you would love in Lents. Because what it would say to Lents is, can you do one pop-up community? And then we'd say to Powellhurst Gilbert, can you do one pop-up community? Then we'd say to Brentwood Darlington, would you do one pop-up community? You know what you're going to find? Your pop-up community would fill in a minute, and there are neighborhoods that would be vacant because they don't have as many homeless people as you. And it would force equalization of the neighborhoods to the homeless problem.
The problem with all of that is there's no incentive to get your ass off of my street and go to that pop-up camp.
You're 100% right.
That's the problem.
So what's got to happen in Portland, it's not the police union that doesn't want that solution. It's the city, county, it's the political machine here that doesn't want that solution. And so, anyway, I'm not going to go into a talk about who I think the political order givers are and the order takers are, but until the order givers are told, like FDR told Tammany Hall in the 1920s, I'm not taking orders from you. I'm not playing your game anymore. I'm going to get elected by the people. I'm going to visit every county. And he did the New Deal in New York before he did it in the United States. It helped a lot of people. But he stopped taking orders from the political machine and told them to go away. And he did that. And someone's got to do that in Oregon. Otherwise, things are just going to get crappier and crappier in hopes that we'll socialize more and more. And I don't think it'll work. There are 2 bad outcomes when things get too chaotic. You have Mussolini taking over in Italy and fascism taking place. Or you have the communists taking over in Venezuela. And I don't like losing my rights and losing my prosperity. I'll probably be dead by then. But I think somebody's betting on us being more of a collective and a happier socialistic country. But yeah.
I just wanted to ask, when you say your van goes out into these communities, I just wanted to go back to that because I find that, and I'm not down in what you're doing because I know these people are in need, and I do have a heart. I mean, I may sound angry about it, which I am, but I know they're people and they need help. But I find that they get dependent upon other people showing up at a certain location. And then they won't disperse because they're dependent on getting those services. So that's going to sound mean of me.
I don't think it's mean because I think it's real.
I think that they just stay in like this general area because people feel like they're doing them. It makes them feel good to go and help them and feed them, but it's not helping them make better decisions to move forward and get off drugs, get a job, and they're just sustaining them.
I think if we could partner with neighborhoods better, we've done it with Buckman, because that's what Buckman neighbors were saying, right by St. Francis Dining Hall. They were saying, you're creating even more of a clog here, more of a dependency, more people are moving in to get your stuff.
Well, they started feeding them down here on the cul-de-sac.
What?
That's been going on a long time.
But it drew the people there, and they never left.
Is that our van?
I don't know if it was your van, but there were several people that
Operation
operations
used
to come out.
And then they tried to put potties there, which brought a bunch of people. And the city flat out told me they did it on purpose to draw people back to the area to get them services. And I said, that's ridiculous. We just got them out. I mean, we had just cleared out the area.
Let me say something. Jason Christensen, who's the new director at Union Gospel, is extremely responsive to the unintended negative consequences of any of our actions. Because we've had to deal with that with Buckman. We had to deal with that up in North Portland. There are ways that you cannot breed what is called a service dependency ghetto.
Yeah, and that's...
You have to follow that recipe. And so we've had to change our stops regularly and alter them regularly to not create a service-dependent
Actually,
energy.
go to Eastmoreland.
What?
Go to Eastmoreland. They have a beautiful golf course over there.
Yeah.
Set up your truck.
I have a suggestion for your outreach and your delivery of things.
Yeah.
And it's sort of minor, but it's not. I walk the spring water 5 days a week.
Yes.
I walk 3 months, every morning.
Yeah.
And this sounds really trite, except that batteries are a major issue.
Huh.
And I understand y'all are out there passing out batteries. And I really think that if all of the people who are helping did a battery exchange
Oh, I like
instead
that
of a
idea.
battery give out, like back in the old day with the needle exchange, where I'm gonna give you 10 and you're gonna bring me 10 and I'm gonna give you 10 more.
Yeah.
Instead of let me give you 144 of them and I'll see you in 3 days when your box is empty and I'm gonna give you another 144. But picking up batteries, and then if you're doing a major cleanup, which we do once a week, you have to have a separate container or a separate bag to put the damn batteries in
Right.
so you don't put them in the garbage. And I am so tired of digging dead batteries out of mud so that I can bring it home and find a container to put it in so that it can be properly recycled. It's things like that that really clutter our neighborhoods and make them worse than they already are.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you all want to feed them, but you're all standing around and waiting until they're through eating so you can pick up the plastic silverware, the paper container it was in, and the leftover food because, oh, they're not eating the food, the rats are. It's just, when you're living in the middle of it,
Yeah, it's different.
yeah.
Bill, what would you suggest for us? I had almost an hour conversation with Jonathan Lewis yesterday.
Uh-huh.
What would you suggest for us? And it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat where you're butting heads with these people that just don't see the reality of the situation.
I mean, I'm a has-been. I'm mouthpiecing what I've learned over the years and what I think is effective. But,
You can't get them to listen.
yeah, I mean, nobody's butting their heads with me anymore because I've lost my clout. Other than in Washington County, I've got a vibrant relationship out there. And I've got to say, I mean, you know, you were talking about it. I see how Gresham handles it. I see how Beaverton handles it. I see how Oregon City handles it. And Milwaukee to a bit of a lesser extent. But Portland is handling it worse for you than any of those places.
They haven't been sued.
They have been sued, but they have people with political will to fight, to know what the law is and fight back, not cave. And we have county attorneys who cave and city attorneys who don't represent you.
Right.
Are they supposed to?
Yeah, I mean, they're supposed to represent I think the city should represent the interest of its citizens,
Absolutely.
not the interest of a hidden policy of a minority of people who are political order givers. And who don't give a rip if it's chaotic out here, because they don't live out here.
They don't drive through it, they don't have their children or grandchildren walk through it, and it's completely unsafe for adults to walk through.
I just know where I've gotten calls from. If Pork Chop pulls his 41-foot bus, he's gone from, the bus is out of the neighborhood. The bus is towed. But when he pulled the bus out to Gresham, it was under an hour when police were knocking with their baton on his door.
Or Clackamas County.
Yeah, or Clackamas County, or Beaverton, because we had an off-street parking thing, and then he got into a brawl through mental health with one of the people on the off-street thing, and he pulled that out on the street. Beaverton police were there within 20 minutes. You're not going to keep it here. We will tow you. And he goes ballistic as he wants. They don't care. Get your bus off the street. You know, get it on private property or get it out of county. But here, he had it parked at 82nd and Inslee for, 5 months?
And then he was at Harbor Freight for quite a while.
Quite a while, and then he was at Flavel and 80th, and he was at Holgate and 80th, and because it's Portland, and the the volume and the political will have failed to respond responsibly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. But it's, you know, if you go, it's the same in Seattle, it's the same in Oakland, it's the same in San Francisco, it's the same in LA, it's the same in San Diego. You know, and BC was the same, but they have a little different dynamic. So you can just ask yourself the question, because I'm always wondering, why is it the same in Seattle, Portland, Oakland, San Francisco, LA, San Diego?
That's easy to answer.
Because it's not the same in Omaha. It's not the same in Jefferson City, Missouri. It's not the same in Denver.
That's because they've all been given one-way tickets out here.
What's that?
Relocated.
What is the answer?
There's a political agenda of tolerance.
Yeah.
There is. You know,
It's
it's,
a liberal view of a lot of things too. I mean,
yeah. I think it's more of a, anyway. I don't know. You could read Capellian's Snapping of the American Mind. That's one possible answer to it. I'm not saying it's the answer. You can read other things that say that chaos, don't waste good chaos.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to drive
Definitely not
us where we
wasting
want
it.
to go.
Salolinsky.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I am I've worked in the city for 32 years. I don't want to see it go through what Detroit's going through. And so we're right at the edge. If we don't clean up downtown, if the Ritz-Carlton project doesn't go through, if we don't end up creating pop-up camps so that it's not worse than third world conditions along the trail in Long Foster
Well,
and in your neighborhood.
how's Homer doing on that project? Because
I mean, he's fighting the city and county all the time to get
'Cause
the
they don't want him.
right to do it. They don't.
I know they don't.
So they're not trying to help him?
No.
I mean, it's just like Wapato.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
didn't
the
help
city
them.
county opposed Wapato.
Yeah.
So Jordan Schnitzer bought it and gave it to Jay Barber and Andy at Helping Hands. It's great. I mean, Alan, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's great. Bobby Lakes is great. Jeff Woodward, who served us well downtown, was in program, went through the whole thing, came off the streets. He's doing a great job running it. And those are good people. Yeah.
How about the White Center? Is there anything, they're doing some little grumbling about doing?
No, I started that rumor.
What was that? Take over Lloyd Center?
Yes.
Yes.
Use it for shelter. I mean, it's
Actually, there is a location right at Lloyd Center that Homer's been given the right to use if he can get it through City Hall.
Oh, good luck.
No, good luck.
I mean, it's free property. He's got the pop-up pods and the whole thing donated, and he's got the land donated.
So who's benefiting from all this? Because somebody's got to be benefiting.
Contractors picking up all the
Well, I'm
crap.
thinking Mark Joland first off.
I know Mark, and I think he genuinely believes this national. I mean, there is a lot of people who believe what the National Alliance to End Homelessness is saying is the solution. You go back and read what they wrote in 2004, the 10-year plan to end
Yeah, the
homelessness.
10-year plan, yes.
And I laughed at it at the beginning, and now I'm crying about it because it got way worse than I thought. I thought I'd break even.
Well, don't they have a new 10-year plan now?
They're not advertising.
They're not gonna be putting a, they're not gonna be putting a timeline on
Is
it.
Mark Jones at all on the right path? Because he's leading us for the city. Is he at all on the right path?
I don't know.
He can speak. No.
I've fought with him. You know what? Anyway, I'm not going to say that. It'll all be personal. I don't have the facts to back it up. But I'll say this to conclude. I just got an email today that a guy who was around Lents Park, I mean, he was homeless in Lents Park, and a Portland police officer said, why don't I take you downtown and you can go on the mission. And he came in like 2008, and he went through program, got a job in construction, reconnected to his kids, and has been living as a tax-paying renter since about 2010. Okay, it took him about 2 years to go through his addiction recovery stuff. So for 11 years, he's been out paying taxes, paying his rent. And he died today a young man in his high 50s. One thing you learn about heroin addicts and chronic alcoholics is they die younger. You end up with liver problems, you end up with blood problems, you end up with all sorts of problems. Average life expectancy of an intravenous heroin addict is 61 years old. So, you're not going to live that long. And Darren, we knew he had Hep C and had to go through interferon treatment when he was at the mission, and we got that done for him. But, people say to me, oh man, how do you feel about that? I go, he lived 11 good years and finished well. And he didn't die in a shithole out in Lents Park or on the trail. And so I think I break it down to one by one. I can't make sense of what's going on in the city or in the county. I can't make sense of what's going on the left coast. And I'm not a raging Republican. My dad was a Union Democrat. When I was a county attorney, I was always kind of a moderate Democrat. But I'm disillusioned about the political solution. I am encouraged that one by one, you can try to mitigate the problem. And
It seems the only thing that's working is one by one.
yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, pork chop's a lot of work.
I don't envy you.
I know. I took him on because he was the worst guy downtown. He was the worst guy at city council. I mean, he had the biggest problems, and they were just letting him pinball around. And so I feel at times like I'm the horse whisperer or something, and Officer Brown and those guys will call me and say, hey, can you calm him down? And it's like, I'll try. And most days, I'd say, 28 out of 30 days I can. But I just know how big of a job it is and how few people there are to do it. And there's no mental health delivery system for it. He's going to have to hurt someone with a gun or a knife or put someone in the hospital to get any response by the government.
Even if there was available, getting him to cooperate. I mean, this is the problem. I used to be an in-home care provider for Loma County, and I worked in a building that was primarily seniors, but I had a bunch of young ones.
Yeah.
With every mental illness you could find, and most of them had 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And the theory behind community-based care is lovely.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
You can stay in your apartment, you've got your friends, you just go and get your drugs, and you go and you get your therapy. The problem is, without the enforcement of a lockdown first, so that they get acclimated to maybe there is a normal, and how to cope with that normal. The community-based care, I'm not going to go today, I'll go tomorrow. I know so-and-so on the 3rd floor, she takes the same meds as I do, but she gets them every month. So I'm going to go and I'm going to go get 2 or 3 from her so that I don't have to go to get my dose. Or I don't have to go to get 5 days worth of pills. And so your community-based care has now completely backfired. And you have a bipolar schizophrenic who is trying to kill her caregiver. It's not fun.
No. So I don't have a solution for everything. I want to reduce. There's no 10-year plan to end homelessness, but there are things we could do to reduce inhumane treatment for both the neighborhood and the people living in the neighborhood. You can't tolerate what's going on here.
No.
There was a report in 2019, and it would have been the same report for parts of Lents, where a woman visited San Francisco and did a report to the UN saying, this is one of the worst conditions of any people in the world. Because they're just allowed to mound up garbage, to sleep in their own ways, we've had hepatitis A breakouts along the West Coast. It's a public health problem, and it's this refusal to allow sanctioned service sanitary camps is insane to me.
And I probably am no longer opposed to that thought. I am, however, opposed to Lents getting 10 of them.
Right. You should have, that's why I say, our argument is there's 92 neighborhoods. Let's have 92 pop-up camps.
But
Gotta take in 9,200 people and you can use those all as a base out of those camps to somewhere else. You can,
Who's gonna go down here to Woodstock between 101st and 102nd, to that crazy group down there, and suggest to them that they're going to move even to Brentwood, Darlington, but to Eastmoreland or across the river and take that group of stuff that's going on down there? They're not going, they're gonna stay right where they're at.
hey, I think Brentwood, Darlington, since they got annexed to the city, have gotten a pretty crappy deal. And they've had a lot of trouble down there in the years I've been here. So I don't think it's a Christian place.
I grew up there. I grew up in Errol Heights.
Okay,
My father grew up in Errol Heights. My grandparents built a house in Errol Heights.
yeah.
And
I'm just saying,
it
they've
was-
been underserved by police, by zoning.
Right,
They haven't
yeah.
got a lot of help down there.
We weren't
And they've
even
had their
asked.
share of homeless.
They didn't say, do y'all want to be part of the city?
I know.
We got letters in the mail saying, oh, and by the
Yeah,
way,
welcome to the city.
yeah, my grandfather started the volunteer fire department in Errol Heights.
Great.
And we've been in that neighborhood a long time. But they don't have the homeless issue that we have. They've got some, but they don't have the green spaces we have. They don't have the open space that Lents has where they can create
Okay.
more and more and more.
I mean, we're winnowing down and we're out of time, but tell me another neighborhood that has the homeless problem that Lents has.
Nowhere in the city.
Delta Park.
Delta Park, you're right.
Yeah, but Delta Park doesn't
And that's
have
not a neighborhood.
Delta Park doesn't have high residential density.
Right,
Because that's why we go to Tweaker Island, we pulled a number of people out there. That's golf courses, that's
all public
businesses.
property.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Welcome to Lents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is
I
our
think,
world.
I'm not feeling, I mean, I do feel bad for Lents. And I do want to be, I think this is one of the neighborhoods that has to be solved, or this, you're just putting a Band-Aid.
But how do we get it solved when the city won't listen to us?
I don't know, I keep telling, and Lisa Mirandis knows it at Harbor of Hope. Homer's got a lot of voices. I'll say this, I met with a multi-area building owner who's one of the highest donors to one of the major elected officials in either the city or the county, either the chair or the mayor. I'll just leave it there. And that person said, every promise told to me about the condition of our buildings and the help we would get has been broken. Every promise. And that person said, I'm done, I'm selling my property and moving to Texas. And I told this elected official to go after themselves, that they're driving me out of the city. That happens enough. And we'll either go to Detroit, all the people of means and worth will leave, and decay will keep taking, I mean, we gotta save downtown and save Lents. That's 1 and 2.
Well,
Delta Park can stay the same way in 10 years and it won't really matter.
I work with city officials and they have always wanted to use Lents as a dumping ground.
Yep.
That's why I pushed this young man a little bit
Yep.
harder about certain things, especially with that one property. We've gone through so much to try and save that property for something good for the neighborhood.
Oh,
And
that
it's just
green
another
space?
example
Yeah,
of what happens.
yeah, it's true.
Quick question, do you have any thoughts on the people for Portland, that new conglomerate of wealthy people that are,
Yeah, we don't know what their agenda is.
I know. Do you have any hope or?
I mean, you just gotta see what, like, say, I wanna see tangible plans and actions.
Well, I would work
That's
with
gonna
Homer, but
reduce
he wouldn't come
chaos in Lents,
Well, I
reduce,
couldn't-
in downtown too. There aren't as many residents, there are high-end residents, but downtown's got significant problems too. I'd say Lents and downtown are the 1 and 2 areas. Old Town's better than Lents.
How is Homer still?
What? Yeah.
How is Homer still?
He's still on like prednisone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was why I took him out. 'cause he was-
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. We are adjourned.
Remember a vote.